Good morning and welcome to TVP World News. It's 8 a.m. in the morning, Warsaw time. I'm Diana Skaya. Volodymyr Zelenskyy is ready to negotiate a deal with Vladimir Putin. At least that's according to Donald Trump, who, when speaking from the Oval Office, said that's what he heard. Putin is eager to meet. Trump also said that his team will organize a summit as soon as possible.
I think they have a lot of power over Russia, so I think Russia should want to make a deal. Maybe they want to make a deal. I think, from what I hear, Putin would like to see me, and we'll meet as soon as we can. I'd meet immediately. Every day we don't meet, soldiers are being killed in a battlefield, and that battlefield is like no battlefield since World War II.
In an interview with Fox News last night, the U.S. president also said that Volodymyr Zelenskyy is, quote, no angel and shouldn't have allowed this war to happen. There's one thing that Trump is pretty decisive. Jan Brzezinski, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, told Adam Jasser on the latest episode of On the Record. According to Brzezinski, who also served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Europe and NATO policy in President George W. Bush's administration, Europe must play its cards correctly if it wants to encourage the American president to change the balance of power on the Ukrainian battlefield and in the result at the negotiating table.
When people talk about months, or they lock on to the statement that they're going to resolve this in the first 100 days, they do so at risk of forgetting that Trump makes decisions quickly. This is not the Biden administration. This is not the Obama administration, where there was process, deliberation, consideration, maybe incremental steps. There's one thing that Trump is: he's pretty decisive, either when he makes a right decision or the wrong decision. He's going to move fast, and he's going to determine whether or not there's prospects for a peace. And he's got three options. I think, right, based on his past statements, it could be imposing on Ukraine an unjust peace, unstable peace. It could be walking away from this, saying, Europe, this is your problem, you're on your own, which would be the same outcome: an unjust peace, unstable peace, a recipe for further conflict. Or possibly, if the Europeans play their cards correctly, they could actually encourage him, cajole him, convince him to do the right thing, which is to really start thinking hard about and acting to change that correlation of forces that forces Russia to the negotiating table.
You can join TVP World's YouTube channel for the full episode of On the Record. Now, speaking about the possible solutions to the war in Ukraine, Gary Tabach, the former chief of staff of the NATO military liaison mission in Moscow, told TVP World that guarantees from Russia are the main issue in achieving lasting and just peace. He also believes the collective West must actively engage in rebuilding Ukraine rather than providing them with just enough aid to survive.
If Putin will guarantee that no borders will be violated for Ukraine, Putin comes and takes Crimea, what are we supposed to do? Replace it with Alaska or Greenland, maybe? It's very difficult to guarantee those things. A lot of it depends on Ukraine itself, what Ukraine is going to do, how it's going to approach the situation, how they're going to deal with a bureaucracy, how are they going to deal with corruption, how they're going to rebuild when they'll get that break, ceasefire break. How quickly will they rebuild their weapon industry, armor industry, and so forth? Of course, with our help, they should do it. And hopefully we'll be able to engage quickly enough, not like those 3 years where we're just nickeling and diming them by dripping help so they just survive.
It's too early to talk about exact numbers, said the spokesperson of Ukraine's foreign ministry about the possibility of foreign troops being stationed in Ukraine as part of a potential peace deal with Russia. Now, these comments follow Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's statement earlier this week that at least 200,000 European peacekeepers could be part of such a security guarantee.
Yes, the discussion is ongoing about the contingents, the military contingents of foreign powers, foreign nations that can be potentially deployed to Ukraine. This discussion is in its very early stages, and right now we see the we see the media discussion about the numbers, the exact numbers, but in fact, in real negotiations and talks, it's too early to talk about exact numbers. From Ukraine's point of view, foreign military contingents can be a part of security guarantees for Ukraine, but not the only part, not the only element. This can be an element in the system of security guarantees for Ukraine, and the aim of those guarantees should be one and main aim is to prevent Russia from attacking Ukraine again.
Belarus uses migrants as a tool of hybrid warfare. These were the words on EU officials' lips in Brussels yesterday morning. Now, the confirmations come just as the regime in Minsk is moving migrants from its border with Poland towards Russia, as Lukashenko tries to avoid domestic upheavals ahead of the sham election scheduled for Sunday. Zuzana Jurek has this report.
This morning, officials in Brussels confirmed what Poland has alleged since 2021.
Hybrid threats arising from the weaponization of migration by Russia, assisted by Belarus, pose a risk to sovereignty, national security, and the territorial integrity of the concerned member states.
These statements were mirrored by observers' opinions who confirmed Poland's long-standing position. The migrant crisis at the border was artificially created by the regime in Minsk.
The schemes of directing migrants to the border with the EU, which involved tourist companies, were under the supervision of people who were subordinated to Lukashenko. These companies would receive money from Lukashenko's regime to move the migrants to the borders.
Polish officials have long warned about the weaponization of migration issues as a tool straight out of the Kremlin's toolbox.
We know very well how Lukashenko, Putin, the smugglers and human traffickers use the right of asylum.
Statements from Brussels emerged just as Lukashenko's regime has already begun moving the migrants inwards towards the border with Russia.
At some point, we observed that migrants were being taken towards Russia from the border zone. Lukashenko may be interested in peace in the country before the presidential election.
The move precedes the upcoming sham election scheduled for this Sunday, in which Lukashenko is expected to be re-elected for his 7th term. His previous falsified electoral victory led to widespread protests across the country.
The migration crisis is a response of the system that Lukashenko built to the very sanctions that were imposed against him, to the non-recognition of the 2020 elections, to the recognition of Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya as president of Belarus.
Though Lukashenko had long denied any wrongdoing, claiming that the migrants were in possession of EU-issued work and travel visas.
If the West wants to catch them at the border and detain them, we also won't do that. They do not want to solve this problem.
But, despite the temporary quiet at the Eastern Front, the warnings about challenges facing the EU are echoing loudly in Brussels.
Financial, energy, migration, terrorist crises, war beyond our eastern border.
Now, with Poland at the helm of the rotating presidency of the Council of the EU, border security and migration is expected to take center stage.
Two watchdog companies identified a group of Russian-affiliated websites spreading propaganda abroad. Now, the alleged group was attempting to influence the results of the upcoming parliamentary elections in Germany. Now, according to analysis by NewsGuard and Corrective, some 102 websites are connected to John Mark Duggan. Now, the outlets published content supportive of politicians and parties friendly towards Russia, like the far-right Alternative for Germany. The former American policeman who received political asylum in Russia fled the United States after similar campaigns against American politicians. In response, the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs said it's surveying the campaign, which in their eyes is aimed at undermining confidence in German public institutions. Union workers from the Serbian state-owned electricity company took to the streets of Belgrade on Thursday evening. Now, the workers joined students in the Serbian capital in ongoing protests sparked by a roof collapse that killed 15 people. And more disruptions are on the horizon as a general strike is expected to begin today. Now, workers and students gathered in front of the Serbian electrical company headquarters in Belgrade. There, they observed 15 minutes of silence to honor those killed in the railway station roof collapse last November. The protests also prompted action from the U.S. Embassy in Belgrade. American officials cautioned U.S. citizens to remain vigilant and leave immediately if they see any disorderly crowds. Tens of thousands of Georgians continue filling the streets of Tbilisi as protesters keep calling for new elections. And demonstrations against the ruling Georgian Dream Party have been raging for 57 days now. This time around, the protesters gathered around the Vaso Abashidze Theater in Tbilisi after actors expressed their support for the movement, as well as those who now face criminal charges for their involvement in the protests. Opponents of the ruling government vowed to continue their riots until new elections are held. The Georgian Dream Party won the most recent parliamentary elections, a victory that was deemed fraudulent by international watchdogs and EU hopefuls inside Georgia. German Interior Minister Nancy Faeser announced on Thursday that the country will enforce stricter laws for deporting asylum seekers who are violent offenders. Now, the announcement follows a deadly knife attack in the city Aschaffenburg, where a 28-year-old Afghan asylum seeker with a history of violent behavior killed a 2-year-old boy and a 41-year-old man, injuring 3 others.
The fact that a person who has found a safe haven in Germany would commit such an offense makes us all angry, and we will not accept it. A false sense of tolerance is out of place here. We have massively toughened the law for the deportation of violent offenders, for more deportations, for more security in public spaces through weapon bans and control. Above all, we have also extended deportation custody and increased detention pending deportation from 3 to at least 6 months. But I want to make this very clear. There must be adequate detention centers in the federal states.
A manuscript of Frédéric Chopin's ballade has been purchased by the National Institute of Frédéric Chopin in Warsaw. The document contains the first 79 bars of the piece, recognized by musicians as one of the composer's finest works.
To this day, Frédéric Chopin stands as a shining paragon of Polish heritage. His music has captured the hearts of millions of people worldwide and is enjoyed by enthusiasts of the Romantic music movement of the 19th century. According to pianists and music experts around the world, the somber nature of Chopin's Ballade No. 4, Opus 52 in F minor, perfectly reflects that era.
The Ballade in F minor is one of Chopin's best-known works, which is why the discovery of another manuscript is a very important event. It's also one of the last ballades written by Chopin and is recognized as one of his hardest pieces to play for pianists.
The Polish National Institute of Frédéric Chopin in Warsaw managed to acquire a manuscript of the piece, penned by Chopin himself prior to the piece's handover to his publisher in 1842. After Chopin's death in 1849, the brilliant composer's sister gave the manuscript to her brother's friend, a Czech composer named Josef Dessauer.
We're dealing with a transcript of an earlier version of the piece, which greatly differs from the officially released version. It shows us Chopin's composing process, which is very interesting in itself, but it also serves as another source for checking mistakes or changes made to the piece.
All knowledge of the document was lost until it was put on auction in Lucerne, Switzerland in 1933. It was bought by Rudolf F. Kallier, an Austrian collector. After spending over 90 years in the Kallier family collection, it was bought by the National Institute of Frédéric Chopin at the tail end of 2024. The document is one of 2 known manuscripts of the piece in the world.
And on that note, we complete this edition of TVP World News. I'm Diana Skaya. Don't go away. Up next, World Talks with Ashim Kumar. Stay tuned.